Hey guys, HackerSploit here, back again with another CyberTalk podcast episode. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look or sort of going through the LastPass password breach or data breach, if you will. And I'll also be walking you through or providing you with guidelines for password security, for personal password security, and also how this applies to an organization. Now, the main question here, or the reason why I decided to make this video or podcast episode, if you will, is primarily because when I saw this particular data breach, I usually have a very good feed set up, and I saw this firstly in August because LastPass was breached in August of the same year, 2022, depending on when you're watching this, and then they were breached on the 22nd of December, just before the festive season. Happy holidays, by the way. I hope you all had a great Christmas and really looking forward to the new year. But with that being said, I noticed the first breach, very curious about it. Really, I didn't have an incentive to make any content about it. And then I saw the second one and I said, okay, looks like we're starting to see a trend. And, there's also been breaches with regards to other password managers. Not directly, but I'll get to that shortly. Now, again, coming back to the incentive is, firstly, I've started seeing a pattern, all right? And the pattern is that, more of these password managers, and I'm calling them that very loosely, and I'll explain why. That's how they've been defined to normal consumers, but that's not, again, it's very vague with regards to their function. So I've started noticing this trend, and it's a little bit worrying. And secondly, I truly believe that in the case of password managers being breached like LastPass and any others like Bitwarden, etc. Bitwarden have not been breached yet, but in the event that they are, again, I just wanted to cover this topic because I think over the last 1 or 2 years, I've sort of been looking at cybersecurity from the perspective of a normal person, and I've said this before, even with technology, and starting to see that it doesn't matter how good attackers and defenders get. Because they're all targeting or protecting the same group of people, and that's normal people. When I say normal, I don't mean that in any derogatory fashion. It could be your father, your grandmother, members of your own family, people who are not in the technology industry, but utilize technology quite heavily. And one of the things they utilize are online accounts. They have passwords, so on and so forth. So the second incentive is to provide this information and education to those people. Now, if you're a pen tester, hacker, cybersecurity individual, someone who works in the blue team, etc., you should already know this. And I'm assuming you've already implemented this. If you work as a defender or a blue teamer for the organization that you're working for, but this is not really known by normal people. So before we actually get started to my recommendations and what I would recommend, and I truly believe that this is the best because I use it personally and I haven't been hacked or haven't had my passwords involved in a data breach of any website that I know of, and I'll also be showcasing that. So I know that I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm trying to clear my thoughts. So there's two incentives. Firstly, I'm noticing a trend. Secondly, I want this video to be an educational resource for people who want to understand passwords, password security, and how to handle, manage, save, essentially ensure that your passwords are kept safely and securely, and you have control over your security, because passwords are essentially your keys, keys to whatever. It could be a Facebook account, it could be a completely worthless account, but I'll get to why that's very important. So those are my incentives, all right? And I'm not going to hit too hard on LastPass because, again, when you sign up for a service like LastPass, if you understand what you're doing, you essentially, are in agreement with the risks that come along with giving a company your passwords or your keys. The amount of burden that you're putting on them with regards to securing and keeping your data secure is very high. But of course, this is not known. LastPass has always prided themselves on saying that they're very secure, they have encryption, so on and so forth. But there's, that really isn't enough because of the scale of the operations and the way and the type of the nature of service they're providing you. And I'll sort of explain this historically speaking and the role that password managers like LastPass serve with regards to cybersecurity. So let me just go through the breach here now that I've gone through my very confusing intro. So this was on the LastPass blog on the 22nd of December by the CEO, which is a little bit weird, but I guess that makes sense. I would have liked to see something from the CTO or the CISO, but you can see this update as of Thursday, December 22nd, 2022. To our LastPass community, we recently notified you that an unauthorized party gained access to a third-party cloud-based storage service, which LastPass uses to store archive backups of our production data. In keeping with our commitment to transparency, we want to provide you with an update regarding our ongoing investigation. So I want you to focus on a few keywords there. Firstly, they were using a third-party cloud-based storage service. They're not saying who, but we can make assumptions. And I'm pretty sure I know which one. But they were using that to store archived backups of production data. Okay, that's a little bit worrying, but I'll proceed on. And finally, this is the keyword here, ongoing investigation, which for those of you who work in cybersecurity know is lingo for we still do not know the extent of the breach and what has been affected. So keep that in mind. So what have they learned so far? So based on our investigation to date, we have learned that an unknown threat actor accessed a cloud-based storage environment leveraging information obtained from the incident we previously disclosed in August of 2022. Aha, all right, so they had a data breach in 2022, which they disclosed. And it looks like that access led to what has happened now. All right, so fairly clear as to what's going on. It could be an APT, could be a particular threat group, but let's see. So they say, while no customer data was accessed during the August 2022 incident, some source code and technical information was stolen from our development environment and used to target another employee, obtaining credentials and keys which were used to access and decrypt some storage volumes within the cloud-based storage service. All right, so in order to understand this in its entirety, we need to, again, take a look at their breach in, as they said here, August of 2022. So let's take a look at that. All right, so I brought up the article from August on the website Dark Reading, which is a great place for cybersecurity news. I usually read it quite a lot, but you can see that this was posted on August 26th, 2022. LastPass suffers a data breach, source code stolen. All right, fairly self-explanatory, but it says right over here, researchers warn that cyber attackers will be probing the code for weaknesses to exploit later. All right, we're starting to see what happened here, but you can see that cyber attackers have compromised the internal systems of LastPass, making off with source code and intellectual property. The password management company said it detected anomalous activity in its development environment 2 weeks ago. Keep note of the environment targeted here. After digging into the forensic data, investigators determined that someone or someones, as I said, probably a threat group, compromised a developer account to gain access to the network, taking portions of source code and some proprietary LastPass technical information, according to an announcement posted this week. By the way, is this blog post still active? I wonder. No, it just redirects to this one. That's interesting. Anyway, crucially, the adversaries weren't able to access customer data or encrypted password vaults. Quote, we utilize an industry standard zero-knowledge architecture that ensures LastPass can never know or gain access to our customer's master password, and it ensures that only the customer has access to the decrypt vault data according to LastPass, end quote. That said, Ajay Arora, co-founder and president of Blue Bracket, noted that the attackers will be looking hard for potential weaknesses to exploit in the LastPass source code, potentially leading to follow-on attacks. How right he was. How prophetic. Quote, an additional consequence that can occur from stolen or leaked source code is that this code can disclose secrets about an application's architecture. Very true. He said via an email statement, this may reveal information about where certain data is stored and what other resources an organization may use, like the third-party services cloud storage services that were quoted earlier in the latest breach. These factors could then equip bad actors to inflict additional harm on an organization after the fact. Tom Kellerman, Senior Vice President of Cyber Strategy at Contrast Security, also said in a statement that the attackers could have been probing around to see if they could find an avenue into LastPass partner of supplier networks. That may be true, but it doesn't look like it's the case. Quote, cybersecurity companies are being targeted to facilitate island hopping, he said, after the FireEye breach. The industry should have woken up. In 2022, cybersecurity companies must practice what they preach. Many still underinvest in their own cybersecurity, expect to be hit and prepare to respond. Phenomenal article. I really like that. So that's what happened in August. I just wanted to give you, a brief overview of that. Now that we know that, let's proceed on with this article, and I'm showing you, what caused it, and I'll then explain a lot about password managers and what you should be doing instead of using the cloud-based password managers. So LastPass production services currently operate from on-premise data centers, which is a good thing, with cloud-based storage used for various purposes such as storing backups and regional data residency requirements. Now, this is something that baffled me when I read this first, all right? Because if we take a look at the LastPass website, and I know I'm skipping around, but I'm just showing you the links that I made. So you can see password management from anywhere, and keep that in mind. Password management. This is very important because this is the convenience that they offer. Now, why am I saying that? Well, a lot of people assume that management equals security. No. Remember the value of your passwords, and if you choose to give someone else to store your passwords on their on-premise data centers, and then they back that up to a cloud-based storage provider or a cloud-based provider, whether it's infrastructure as a service or software as a service, you're increasing the threat surface, whether you do it knowingly or unknowingly. All right, so they have a personal and business. Business is very, very popular in a lot of organizations, government units were hit by this, especially in the United States. But you can see that they really focus primarily on their convenience side of things, which is true. Password managers were there to fill that gap, the gap of convenience, which I'll get to. But you can see there's a login and go. You have the browser extensions. You just click on your account. Your password is there. You don't even need to know what your password is. Passwordless login. You can also utilize the authenticator instead of your master password. Fantastic. You can generate strong passwords, which is true. That's one of the great things there. Store digital records, which I've said many times, even on Twitter. Please don't do that. Do not do this, please. This is really stupid. Storing insurance cards, credit card numbers, Wi-Fi passwords, and important documents. You'd never do that because you don't know how this works. They explain it, but I'll explain why this is, this does not make me comfortable. So share effortlessly. You can share passwords. That's great. I like that feature, the fact that you can share passwords with someone else. And then dark web monitoring, which is a bit stupid, to be fair, because they say stop worrying about data breaches. Get alerts if your personal information is at risk. Oh boy. I would like to know how they are able to track this, whether they have a CTI team in place. But anyway, so their focus is peace of mind wherever you go. Save a password once and it's instantly available on a single device, type for free with premium. LastPass goes everywhere you do, across all your devices. Fantastic. Recognized by experts. Excellent. Very cheap. There's a free version here. Unlimited passwords, they say. Free premium trial. Passwordless login. So on and so forth. And then, the premium gives you 1 gig encrypted file storage, which we'll get to. So I just want you to take note of that. All right. And one thing that I'll focus on lastly is the core features. So you can see that nothing really on the front page refers to specifically about the way the data is stored. So I'm going to try and find that information. So just give me a moment, guys. One moment. All right. So it looks like they had it on their personal page where they essentially, they had it on the home page where they essentially explain what the password vault is, which is what they call the process of saving your passwords in an encrypted format. It's not really a vault if you understand vaults, but let's take a look at this. So what is a password vault? Password managers like LastPass store all your passwords and other essential information in a password vault. Think of it like a physical safe, but for your online valuables. Okay, all right. This is very problematic, but your LastPass vault is your home base for everything you've saved, including your password, secure notes, and credit card information. If you're new to LastPass, you can import sites into your vault or add them manually. Or with the browser extension, LastPass will automatically capture account passwords as you enter them on every website. From the LastPass vault, you can launch websites, edit login information, add notes, share login information, edit and then share it, okay, and much, much more. So what sites should I save in my password vault? They immediately tell you straight off the bat, store your financial information. Are you seeing the problem here? This is a very big problem, because they're providing a service and then telling you what you should save it into it, in addition to just passwords. This is what makes up a human being in the 21st century. Your financial information, whatever it is, could be, you know, the documents, your banking passwords for online banking, your email, which is arguably is the most important aspect of your online presence, and then social media, which a lot of people utilize, myself included. So you can start to see why this is very problematic. Now, why is it problematic? Why is it? Well, it starts off here, which I always had a qualm with, and I'll show you what transparency looks like. Okay? And I know that this is proprietary software. I'm not a moron. I understand it. But they're catering towards normal people, but they're making it look like it's a vault. So if you think about it, a safe, what's a safe? A safe in typical nomenclature or, you know, parlance is a very fortified container where you store your stuff. And the whole premise behind it is that it is impossible to break into physically, or damn near impossible, in that the process of breaking into it outweighs, you know, whatever the benefits you'll gain from getting inside. That's the fundamental premise. Now, the thing about safes is that, you know, we realized very early on is that they're not really secure. We can easily pry them apart if they're storing stuff that's extremely valuable. So what happened is, when people knew this, and we're talking physical security here, it was very important that a safe or safes had defense in depth built around it. So if you think of a bank, let's say we're talking about an old school bank with vaults, right, where they have money in there and they could have gold, whatever the case. Before you reach that vault, there's multiple layers of security, and remember, everything is in one place. Now, many people can say, well, that's a centralized point of failure, but that's still much safer, because, again, you're not giving your safe to someone else to keep, because if they get breached, or if they have an intrusion, then your data, you know, that breach affects you. So the whole premise was, everything needs to be kept in a centralized place, and there needs to be, you know, defense in depth. So it's not really like a vault or a safe, because you don't know where the safe is. You can't physically go and see, this is the server that's storing my password. Do you even know where the data centers are? They just say it's on premise. Where's this server you're talking about? So I just want to clarify that for normal people. You can see they explain, you know, why you need a password vault, and they say, according to the 2017 Verizon data breach report, 81% of breaches are due to weak or reused passwords. Passwords are the weak link. It's very good that they know this, but you know, they have created a new problem. The one thing that I want you to keep in mind is companies like LastPass. I'm not hitting on them. They were solving the problem of convenience, right? And I'll explain what they are. I know I'm rambling, but I just want you to understand what's going on here. So at LastPass, security is our #1 priority, they say. With local-only encryption, your data is encrypted and decrypted at the device level. Well, this doesn't make sense based on what we just read, but okay, data stored in your vault is kept secret, even from LastPass. Okay. Your master password and the keys used to encrypt and decrypt data are never sent to LastPass servers and only accessible by LastPass. All right, so we are also SOC 2 type 2 compliant, which is, that's really something to brag about. This detailed review of our controls and processes is a gold standard, and they put it in quotes, rightfully so, for confirming the security and reliability of LastPass. Anyway, the key takeaway there is that LastPass the company was founded on the basis of providing convenience, password convenience. Now, based on what you've just read, look at this direct contradiction here. All right, so while no customer data was accessed during the August 2022 incident, some source code and technical information was stolen from our development environment and used to target another employee, obtaining credentials and keys which were used to decrypt some storage volumes within the cloud-based storage device. So I thought, firstly, even if they are storing, let's assume they are storing passwords, they can be decrypted. And secondly, they're making backups, which is a good thing. That's a very, very good thing. But somehow the keys were available to decrypt this information. All right. So I'll proceed on. LastPass production services currently operate from on-premise data centers with cloud-based storage used for various purposes, such as storing backups and regional data residency requirements. The cloud storage service accessed by the threat actor is physically separate from our production environment. That sentence there contradicts itself because development and production environment are almost valuable in the same way if you know what you're doing in cybersecurity. To date, we have determined that once the cloud storage access key and dual storage container decryption keys were obtained, the threat actor copied information from backup that contained basic customer account information and related metadata, including company names, end user names, billing addresses, email addresses, telephone numbers, and the IP addresses from which customers were accessing their LastPass service. So that's another clarification that I wanted to make. No passwords were revealed that we know of. All right, so they were able to get basic information like, basic metadata, as they say, company names, end user names, billing addresses, email addresses, telephone numbers. So if you look at this, if you're a LastPass user customer, you might be saying, Alexis, well, I'm okay with that being in the public because, I assume that information is public. Well, think of it from the perspective of a company or a military unit or government that was using LastPass. What this would essentially mean is, let's use the case of a military unit, let's say the US Air Force, just as an example. They don't use LastPass, but as an example, they would presumably be utilizing their gov email addresses. However, if these individuals were high-ranking, involved in some operations, the information that could be useful to another state or state intelligence, information like telephone numbers and addresses. So this information is very important. Now, to most people, it may not seem like that important, but remember, when this data is released, presumably through the dark web, as they say, or being sold, someone can buy this for a plethora of reasons. They can do it for identity theft or impersonation. If you're someone who has a certain profile, they now know where you live. They can target you. They have your phone number. They can do a lot of stuff with this information. Whoever buys it can do a lot of stuff. But this is a big problem here. So the threat actor was able to copy a backup of customer vault data. Remember, backup of customer vault data. So they're referencing the vault now from the encrypted storage container, which is stored in a proprietary binary format that contains both unencrypted data, such as website URLs, as well as fully encrypted sensitive fields, such as website usernames, and passwords, secure notes, and form-filled data. And then in bold, it says these encrypted fields remain secured with 256-bit AES encryption and can only be decrypted with a unique encryption key derived from each user's master password using our zero-knowledge architecture. So the core is still safe, but personal info was definitely leaked here. So as a reminder, the master password is never known to LastPass and is not stored or maintained by LastPass, which is true. The encryption and decryption of data is performed only on the local LastPass client. For more information about our zero-knowledge architecture and encryption algorithms, they explain that here, which I will go to, but they essentially go they go into, whether or not your data is at risk here. So, the very pedantic explanation is given here where the threat actor may attempt to brute force to guess your master. No, they're not going to do that. Now that they've got emails, they'll filter through and identify persons of interest. They'll then take a look at other password breaches linked to that particular email. If there's a password they identify, they'll perform a password spraying attack, and I'll explain what that is. So they keep touching on the fact that passwords are encrypted. That's not important. It doesn't matter. The customer data was leaked. Very important information. No one or nowhere online can you find my address, and there's a good reason for that, but here we go. So they say here, this is very interesting. We routinely test the latest password cracking technologies against our algorithms to keep pace with and improve upon our cryptographic tools, controls. And then they, of course, explain they may also target the attacker with phishing attacks, which they will. They'll probably be sending out, if the data is bought and used, they'll probably be sending out phishing emails that look like they came from LastPass telling them to reset their password. They probably already have. And the normal person will say that, let me do this right now. They changed their password. That's it. If their vault was present or their passwords were present, pretty much gone. And they explain that here. So it's important to know that LastPass will never call, email, or text you and ask you to click on a link to verify your personal information. They will. They also explain they'll never ask you for your master password, but I'm assuming you can do password resets anyway. So they go on and sort of explain the whole thing, which is, I honestly appreciate. And then I believe they also had some of their earlier mentions here. So passwords are not compromised in clear text, but proprietary information was stolen. The attackers have a good understanding of their development environment and also where they're storing backups. The proprietary information or the details about the proprietary technology behind the platform is known. So you're very likely to see, but because it's by a particular threat group and they haven't leaked any information about it with regards to what they found, you'll probably see some 0 days, probably. I'm saying probably, but there we are. So a lot of you may be saying now, well, Alexis, this is not as serious as you were saying. They just got personal info. My personal info is not that valuable. Okay, that's fine. That's fair. But this is a problem. So why is this a problem? Why are password managers like this a problem? Well, a lot of you may say, I rent servers, through cloud hosting providers. You could use AWS, you could use Linode, you can use DigitalOcean. I don't know where those data centers physically are, but I trust that the data contained within them or the data center itself is secured physically and has all the prerequisite security policies in place, essentially protecting my server from being accessed either physically or remotely. And that's fine when you're hosting a website or something like that. But when it comes down to personal information, you can't be doing this. You really can't, regardless of whether your stuff is encrypted or not with regards to your passwords. This information, as I've already shown you, allows the attackers to perform targeted attacks, phishing attacks, a lot of stuff. And a lot of people who have been affected by LastPass probably haven't read this or don't understand it. So what LastPass, the CEO of LastPass, is essentially trying to say for everyone is these guys broke in August. They've not said who. We don't know what the extent of what they did or what they know. They know how a development environment works. They've been able to decrypt the containers, the backup containers that are stored on a cloud storage service. And they were able to get metadata about user accounts, like all your details, probably also some payment information, your address, phone number, so on and so forth. They can sell that info, doesn't matter, to scammers, so on and so forth. But your passwords are still encrypted, which is a great thing. That's really a great thing from a password, from a security perspective. Encryption has really saved them here. And what they've said is true. It'll be unrealistic to crack, to attempt to crack those hashed passwords or salted passwords. So while your account or your accounts may not be at risk at the moment, for most people, depending on where this data ends up, they'll probably be targeted in one way or another. Probably the most important people or a segment of people. Okay, so that's the LastPass breach in a nutshell. All right. Now, what problem did LastPass, or is LastPass looking to solve, or they've already solved to a certain degree? The problem they're trying to solve is the problem that has persisted since password security policies or password security became a thing, and that was, hey, we have the internet has been here for the last 2 or 3 decades now. There's been all of these websites coming up with accounts, and they require passwords. In the early days, people were just typing in whatever was important to them, stuff they could remember. And then, cybersecurity started becoming a thing. Passwords were being, accounts were being attacked, or, were being accessed without authorization because they were very easy to guess. Brute force attacks were very viable because people were typing in their birthdays, names of their spouse, the city they were born in, very basic stuff, all right? So then cybersecurity came into the play and said, okay, guys, you need to stop doing this. There are 2 recommendations we make. Number 1, your password length should be nothing less than 8 characters. Secondly, it should be a combination of alphanumeric characters. It should consist of symbols, uppercase, lowercase, so on and so forth. Essentially a random string that cannot be guessed by anyone because it's random, okay? And the problem with that is, and it's the same thing we had with the internet, is, humans can't remember that, okay? And the second recommendation that was brought up by cybersecurity professionals was, please make sure you use a different password for every account or for every website. The reason they said this is because if you use the same password for all your accounts, if someone found a password for one of your accounts, they could try it on all of your other accounts. And if you use the same password, they could gain access to all of your accounts. That's what is known as a password spray attack, where they get one password, they're able to get one of your passwords. And then they say, well, this guy's probably a moron. He probably used the same password on all of the other sites, whatever the sites may be, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Let's try and see if it works. And it works most of the time. It was a very successful attack. It still works, if you can believe it, especially within organizations where you see people using their Outlook password for some of the other internal services. Like I would assume that's what happened with LastPass in their development environment. They were probably using the same password for Docker, for whatever development environment they were using. I'm just making an assumption, but that's typically what happens. So anyway, those are the 2 recommendations provided or given to us by cybersecurity or the cybersecurity industry in general. And the problem that people saw, that normal people had, was, hey, that's all cool, but I can't remember all of this. So the cybersecurity professionals did not really answer this, and that's where we made a mistake. We kept this knowledge to ourselves. We didn't answer it, and so the people said, okay, I guess I'll just write them down. Because I value the security of my accounts, or I'll note them down in a Word document and save it within my documents, which is something you shouldn't be doing, because who knows whether you'll get hacked or your computer, will be accessed without authorization, so on and so forth. And there's the whole issue of if your operating system user account password is weak and then someone's able to access that, and then they land on this bombshell of a document with all your passwords, it sort of defeats the purpose of those 2 security guidelines that were put forward by the cybersecurity industry. So I can't really blame normal people for this. And I say normal, again, this is not derogatory in any way, but I can blame them there, because what else were they going to do? Well, this is where password management came into play. Now, when I speak of password management, I'm speaking specifically of password managers that stored the encrypted vault, if I can call it that, or KeePass, locally on your system. So one of the ones that a lot of security professionals are aware of is KeePass. KeePass is not online. It's a program. It's open source, so you can actually analyze the source code. It's open source, free, and it's primarily for Windows, but also has variants for Mac and Linux. All right, and what you do is you install it. It's a program. You create a vault, and the vault has a master password, very similar to how LastPass works, and it's encrypted, and you can essentially specify the encryption algorithm you want to use. So I'll actually show you, how to use KeePass as an example. I still use KeePass to this day. All right, so you can see very basic site, doesn't look as snazzy as LastPass. The key thing I want you to note is you save this on your own system, or you can take the vault and save it on a hard drive and lock that hard drive up in your own safe or in your safety deposit box. The key thing I'm pointing out here is that you control where this is stored. So you don't even need to store it on your main operating system or your main computer. You can save it on a flash drive, wherever you want, so on and so forth. And it also utilizes AES 256. Okay, so that's why I'm currently running in a VM. So I'll just head over to downloads, and you can download it here. I'll download the actual installer, and I'll show you how this works. So the reason why I'm taking you through this is because this also had another issue which I want to highlight. So I'll just run it here, and let's accept that here. All right, next. And yeah, I'll make sure I install everything here. I'll also create a desktop shortcut, install, and there we go. So we'll give this a couple of seconds. All right, LastPass is installed, so I'll just launch it, and I'll show you how this works. So enable automatic updates. Yeah, I'll disable this, don't really need it. So this is KeePass, very simple. All right, so the first thing you'll need to do is you create a vault or a new database, as KeePass calls it. So you create a new database. It'll say your database will be stored in the KeePass database file, which is a regular file. After clicking OK, you'll be prompted to specify the location where KeePass should save this file. It is important to remember where the database file is stored. You should regularly create a backup of the database file onto an independent data storage device. Okay, so we'll create one. I'll save it on my desktop. Please don't do this. So it's a KeePass database file with the extension KDBX. So I'll just call it database and save it. So this is now your encrypted database file or your vault. It then asks you to specify a master key, which will be used to encrypt the database. A master key consists of one or more of the following components. All components that you specify will be required to open the database. If you lose one component, you will not be able to open the database anymore. So you specify a very strong password, okay? And in this case here, I can type in a very simple one, but it'll actually tell you the quality of the password based on its complexity. And I'll just say, let's see, LastPass breach. This is probably the wrong thing, but I'll get to this. So I can add a few things here. There we are, LastPass breach 2022, and you can also show expert options. You can also utilize a key file, all right? So a key file can be used as part of the master key. It does not store any database data. If an attacker has access to the key file, it does not provide any protection. You can also utilize the Windows user account. This source uses data of the current Windows user account. The data does not change when the account password changes. If the Windows user account is lost, yeah, that's not recommended. So never tie it to a key. I'll explain why, but you can also specify a key provider, or create a key, or utilize a pre-created key. A key is, it uses the key pair authentication, so it's sort of an added security feature. So you just say master password and then hit OK. All right, so it'll tell you that it's weak because this is a master password. So master password is the password for the actual database, your vault. So this should be something that's very strong, again, should be very difficult to guess. And the next question is, where do you save this? Well, I typically recommend saving this, not really in a document, but saving it in whatever format you want that's easily accessible and that can't be corrupted. It can stand the test of time, which I'll explain why, and ensuring that you save it, or preferably in an area where only you have access to, something like a safe or a safety deposit box. You just make sure no one can find this in your room or under your mattress or anything like that. So I'll hit OK. So the database name is Alexis passwords. All right, very simple. And you can play around with the security, specify the encryption here, and then the actual key, the key function that you want to use. So AES-KDF is the best, and how many iterations. So the master key is transformed into a key derivation function to add, this adds a work factor and makes the dictionary and guessing attacks harder. So it essentially makes, this is where you can increase the security or make it difficult for your database file to be cracked based on the strength of your master password. So the key takeaway here is if you use a weak ass password for your, as you know, as your database master password, then this process just will unwind it, you know, in and of itself. So again, please do what I'm telling you to do. Take it very seriously. You can play around with the other options, but anyway, I'll just hit OK. And it'll then give you this emergency sheet, which I like. So a KeePass emergency sheet contains all important information that is required to open your database. It should be printed, filled out, and stored in a secure location where you and possibly a few other people that you trust have access to. It is recommended that you create an emergency sheet for your database. So if I say print, you can see that in this case I would have liked a PDF, but yeah. And anyway, you can print that out. I do that, and of course I'll not tell you where I saved it because you guys will probably find a way of getting access to it, or maybe not, but it gives you some sample entries which I will delete. So these are passwords. So this is what a password manager looks like, and this is still what I use. All right, now what does this mean? Well, how do you use it? So it's very simple. This is essentially what LastPass has, and the only difference comes into the area of accessibility and essentially providing you with a much easier service to use, right? Because I can create a password and, you know, you'd say Gmail account here, for example, and, you know, you put in your Gmail account's email. So in this case, I can say Alexis at LastPass. Oh boy, that'll probably get me in trouble. Alexis at washacked.com. And then you put in the password for your email. Now, the other cool thing is it also provides you with a generator. So an open password generator where you can specify, you can say the length of generated password is set to 20, uppercase, lowercase, digits. You can specify what symbols you want to use. You can also generate it using a pattern or with a specific algorithm. Really cool stuff. So I can say, okay, here, it'll, you know, you can then, you can say automatically generated passwords. Sorry, we go back to the open password generator, and you can specify the actual profile. So, you know, we can say hex key 256 built in, and that's using a specific pattern. And then I say okay, and then it generates that particular password. So this is a bit overkill, but you know, I'll say we'll say automatically, yeah, let's specify that there, and you know, we'll hit okay, and it generates that password for you. So based on the options you specify, it'll generate that password. But of course, in your case, you'll be putting in an email, the password for your account here, and then you enter it. You enter in any details and specify. You can also specify when it expires. You can also attach file attachments, which is much better to do here. And you can specify additional metadata, which I'll not get into. So you hit OK, and you then save. And now you can see that this is your data. I'll delete the shortcut to KeePass, but this is your database file. So if I open it, it's now going to ask you for your master password. So whenever you try and access your passwords, you're going to need to provide this password. And if you don't, you're not going to be able to get access to it. So let's see if I even remember what I typed in. Oh boy. Okay, so there we are. You can see. Okay. LastPass. Okay, there we are. So that's an example. If you don't have the master password, you can't have, again, access to it, so on and so forth. But you get the idea. So the problem with this is this was really cool and convenient. Normal people probably haven't even used this. And if they would have, the problem they would have said, well, I can't keep on going to my master password or opening up KeePass, typing in my master password, going on to the account or searching for it, and then copying the password and then pasting it on the account. I know this it seems cumbersome. You know, that's really a big issue for me. But okay, so in that case, companies like LastPass and Bitwarden, which is probably, I would say, my recommendation if you do want to use a password manager that provides you with all the convenience that LastPass does, but is much more secure because it's open source. And they essentially provide you a lot of control around this. You can also self-host it yourself, but the feature that I'm referring to here is, if I head over to Mozilla add-ons, and I'll just use LastPass for the purpose of this demonstration. So I say, LastPass, there we are, Password Manager, they have their browser extension. So what you do if you are a customer of LastPass or Bitwarden for that matter, and this is one of the really cool features that they provided normal people with, and I have to respect them for it. By the way, this doesn't look like it's loading, so let's try and refresh that. Oh, come on, Firefox, don't tell me that crashed. Let's see, let's load that up again. I'll show you how this works. You probably already know this, but I just want to highlight this. So I'll just add it to Firefox, and it says downloading but doesn't add. There we are. So I'll say add. So we have LastPass here. I'll say okay, accept the permission. So you log in with your LastPass account. And what this would do then is whatever passwords are stored on your LastPass vault, they will be automatically brought up to you as an autofill option. So when you're trying to log into Google, it'll say, when you click on this browser extension, it'll say, you want to log into this Google account, you click on it, it autofills it for you, and you sign in. Very, very easy, very convenient. Now, the problem that I have is browser keychains have been there for forever, insofar as I can remember. So what's a browser keychain? If you've used your browser, you should know that your browser saves passwords for you in something that's called a browser keychain. All right, and it is accessible only after authentication with your Windows user account or your user account. So if I go into Firefox here and I go into privacy and let's see where it's stored, the logins and passwords. So you have saved login. So you can see right over here under Firefox, you have primary password. You can learn more about it. It was formerly known as a master password, or I wonder why. But you can see that you use a primary password to protect stored logins and passwords. So this allows you, this is essentially a password manager that browsers provide you with. So I don't know why people moved on to this, because this was still going to be stored locally. You didn't need to sync with your account, but you can see you specify, primary password, master password, and then your logins are saved. So you'd be able to auto log in or autofill your login details with whatever credentials were saved, and that was easily accessible. Of course, the same security principles apply, that your master password is the key to the vault, so that needs to be as secure as possible. So why am I saying all of this, or why am I covering all of this? The reason I'm covering this is because I'm trying to show you that you can obtain the same level of security and even convenience through the tools you utilize already. Okay, I used a very bespoke example of KeePass, but you can search for open source password managers. You save the database where you save it. And of course, you take the risk associated with that. If you save the master, your database file, in your closet or in a flash drive inside your closet, and someone accesses it, well, they can still try and crack it, or try and guess passwords. But if they don't know the master password because it's encrypted, they have no chance. So the only difference here is your personal info is not being leaked. You have peace of mind that you know where your stuff is. And I'll tell you another thing. This is very, very important. Managing your passwords is something that is going to be a huge discussion for families, for individuals, and I'll tell you why. A lot of what a person does nowadays online is heavily tied to their accounts on social networks, on multiple services. Your Amazon, whatever you're doing on the internet, that site pretty much, I would assume, has an account. All right. And there's some very important accounts. Some accounts are more important than the others, right? You can imagine banking information, your Amazon account, accounts that have subscriptions, so on and so forth. Why am I saying this? Well, imagine if I today were to pass away, my family, if I did not have the setup that I have, which I'm not going to get into, but I'll tell you what you can do, my family would not be able to access any of my accounts ever. ever. Why is that? Well, firstly, if you're saving them, your master password in your head, or you have it written down somewhere, it can get lost. It's happened to many families before where the will was stored somewhere. It gets lost, gets stolen, gets destroyed, so on and so forth. No one told the family where the will was stored. No one told the family where the keys to the safe were stored. Whatever was stored inside, gets lost, so on and so forth. What I'm referring to here is estate management, or essentially ensuring that when you die, your online presence, which it's a bit sad to say, but, your existence is also partly online, which means that your family is pretty much, are going to try and access your accounts, try and obtain information, that's pertinent now that you've passed away, maybe deactivate your social networks, so that, it's pretty clear that you've died. And I'm sorry that I'm making it comical. I'm using myself an example. Before this, maybe 3-4 years ago, if I would have died, that's it. There's no way my family is accessing even my computer, fully encrypted. Only I know where the stuff is stored. So what I would recommend you do now is to build a policy around this. So save all of your passwords. And again, this is just advice. Save them in your own database, your encrypted vault, using something like KeePass. Okay. You can keep one on your system, maybe in a flash drive that you connect to your system that is probably also encrypted. You're able to access your passwords whenever you want via KeePass. Or you can utilize the browser keychain, but I don't recommend that for a plethora of reasons tied to the actual browser itself. But you do that, you'd make a backup every month or every quarter, every year. You save it on a storage medium. Preferably new, that you'll not be using for anything else, flash drive, hard drive, etc. Do not store it on any cloud storage device. You've already seen what that leads to. Don't do that. I know it's convenient, but just do not do that, because cloud storage providers may be here today, but in the next 30 or 40 years, who knows? So you just make sure you're taking backups of the database file. And then secondly, this is where you now get into the will side of things. But have that printed out, the master password printed out, save it somewhere as secure as possible, preferably in a safety deposit box that only you have access to, and make it part of the execution of your will. Make it very, bespoke. Tell maybe someone you trust, your spouse, whatever. Of course, be careful with that. I'm just saying, be careful with who you tell this information to. Essentially, lay out a plan for when you die. In your will, there should be instructions that say, okay, to gain access to all these accounts and computers, what you need to do is obtain this storage device stored here. All right, you've done that. Step number 2, install this piece of software. Step number 3, receive this document saved in his safety deposit box or whatever that has the password. Decrypt the password database file, and you'll be able to get all his passwords to his computers, his mobile devices, his online accounts, so on and so forth. So that, again, if you die, who knows when we're all going to die, that information is available to your family, and it's streamlined. And, whatever happens after you die, whether there's misuse of data or there's malicious actors within your family or whatever, you also need to keep that in mind. Whatever happens, that that was clearly defined, and there's nothing left in the dark. And, your family at least has that if they required any additional information. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. Now, I would like to end this episode by talking about data breaches and how you can actually identify whether your email has been part of a data breach. So, and your password, of course. The best site for this is a site called Have I Been Pwned, which I've covered before. It was started by a really well-known cybersecurity professional known as Troy Hunt. It's essentially an online service that's free. It allows you to essentially discover and identify whether you indeed have been pwned or you've been part of a data breach. So the thing that I like it tells you right over here the largest breaches and then the recently added breaches. So you can actually see the ones that were recently added as part of what was available. You can see 641 pwned websites, 11 million, almost 12 million pwned accounts, 115,000 pastes and paste accounts right over here. So check if your email or phone has been in data breach. So what you do is you essentially say, put in your email here. This is already known, but there we are. You can see it tells me good news based on the data that they have from all of these data breaches, like Facebook accounts, MySpace, etc. My account has not been involved in any breach. Okay, so you can also take a look at the domain search here, and also who has been pawned. So what companies have been pawned, like 000 webhost, which I used before. All of these companies that have I been pawned has the actual breach information of or for. And in the case of have I been pawned, what these LastPass attackers would probably have done is taken the email that they obtained there, come in here, and if your account was involved in part of a previous breach that affected any of these companies, it'll actually display your password or the password for your account at that time, which is why I also recommend changing your password regularly. Now on my website, on my blog, HackerSploit.org, I had a post that I posted 3 years ago now that's on how to develop a security policy. Why is this important? And I think a lot of why this is such a big issue with regards to even the internal operations of LastPass is that while they may have security policies, it's clear that they're not being enforced. Ask anyone who works in cybersecurity that if this thing is not enforced, it doesn't matter whether you have the best, well laid out security policy on earth, it's not going to work. And in this case, it looks like they probably, they were reusing passwords in the dev environment, leaving things stored here and there, leaving passwords stored as terminal environment variables for ease of access. All of that bad practice stuff is probably what led to this. All right, so I've essentially explained the CIA triad here. And then I, of course, explain, user authentication and password policies here. So, passwords, etc., SSH keys. You should use you should not use the same password for other accounts. Password should not be written down or, shared through any electronic communication medium, which is very important. A lot of people send passwords via emails, which is so dangerous. And, always store your password in password managers. When I say password managers here, I'm referring to KeePass as an example. There's plenty others. Take backups of your SSH keys if you have SSH keys, and do not store your SSH keys on any cloud storage provider. This prevents SSH keys from being linked or stored on any online platform that could be compromised. And then, of course, their change policies. I've also highlighted server security protection policies and, backup and recovery policies. So I've already explained this. You can also take a look at this GitHub repo here that provides you with some security policy templates if you are working in a company. This is by Juniper. And of course, there's also the NIST password guidelines, which you can take a look at here. This is really with regards to password security, not management of passwords. And finally, please enable two-factor authentication. I know it's a pain. I know it's a pain even when switching from one phone to another, or wherever you have the authenticator app saved. Switching those accounts can be very cumbersome, but just do it. Trust me. Just enable two-factor authentication, preferably with an authenticator, not with your phone number, because phone numbers are very temporary in the long run. You'll probably have a different phone number 10 years from now, so just keep that in mind. Think of things in the long term when it comes to managing your own security. And of course, hopefully this has been of some use to you. My recommendations broken down are: ensure that you generate complex secure passwords using something like KeePass, as I pointed out. Just do it. I know it takes time, but just do it. Secondly, create a new password for every account you create. Thirdly, constantly change your passwords. You don't have to do it like on a company-wide basis, but make sure whenever you can, whenever you have a free weekend, your primary accounts, like your online banking accounts, your emails, your social network, just change them. I would recommend every quarter for normal people. So just change them, make sure they're saved in the new database, take a backup, so on and so forth. Try and avoid services like these ones, unfortunately, that provide you with convenience, which again was already there. So I know it seems like whenever you're spending money on something that is supposed to be secure, that you feel that you're secure. Unfortunately, that's far from the truth. I would be lying if I told you that I could cure all your security problems. The unfortunate problem with that is the new security paradigm that you've introduced is you've done the one thing that you should never do. You've given someone that you don't trust your information, regardless of whether you're paying them. How do you know what I'm doing with that information? You're essentially making a judgment. That's why if you are going to use something like one of these online password managers, use something like Bitwarden because it's open source. And I'm not going to go through their site, but that's the one I would recommend. And also frequently check a site like Have I Been Pwned to all of these services are free. You don't need to pay LastPass to tell you whether your account has been breached. The only thing they're doing is convenience, in that they will send you an email telling you, hey, your account was involved in this breach. You already have all the resources here. You don't have to pay for anything. And most importantly, you control your security. And I'll be honest with you, I am never moving my passwords to the cloud, whether you're using BoltPass or whatever, any of these self-hosted password management tools. I'm never doing that. I'm sorry. I just can't do that. That's just the way I am. My passwords are stored and I know where they are. I have backups. I have redundant backups. And I have clear instructions on how to access that database file in the event of my death or incapacitation. So what I'm saying to normal people is this thing, you can do it yourself. You don't need to be an expert in technology or cybersecurity. You don't. You can do all of this stuff yourself. It's free. I'm not telling you to buy anything. The reason why I made this episode is to show you that even though you've paid LastPass, if you have an account with them, and I'm not bashing LastPass, let them keep doing what they're doing. People will keep signing on with them. And this type of stuff may be mitigated, so on and so forth. But I'm not comfortable with my data being breached. I think I've done very well for myself, being on the internet for almost 2 decades at this point, or slightly shorter than that. I haven't been hacked. My systems have never been compromised, and that's because I understand the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are very simple. Think of it as if you're saving something that's very important to you. Would you give a third party to hold it for you? And even if you did something like a bank or a safety deposit box within a bank, you know where it is. You know physically where it is, and you have the necessary authorization and rights that are afforded to you by the government to access that whenever you want. You can pretty much do whatever you want with your information, your data, so on and so forth. With that being said, I know this was quite a long episode. I just wanted to highlight this and sort of give this out as just general, public service type of information. But yeah, for those of you that are more interested in detecting intrusions, I've covered this before. If you are saving your passwords online or even on your computer, an additional step you can take is to utilize canary tokens, which is a very simple intrusion detection system. It's third party, but the way it works is you generate a booby trap or a honeypot, and you make it look enticing to detect an intrusion. So in this case, you can generate, let's say, a Microsoft Word document, and you can specify, as I said, it's third party, so use this at your own risk and will. What you do is you specify an email or a webhook, but for you, you can just say, here's my email. I want you to send me an email to this email telling me that this note or this document has been opened, and you add additional metadata. So what you typically do for small companies, I've done this myself. I have my own version of canary tokens, the same system, but we generate a Word document called passwords.txt and save it on every workstation under documents. And the reason we do that is in the case of potential intrusion and we aren't able to detect it, the attacker will go through the user's directories and see, there's a document called passwords.txt. Jackpot, they open it up, we get an email, we know that there is an intrusion, and we're able to take the necessary action. So this is canarytokens.org, really cool site here, really cool service. That's if you're at a personal level. You can also put it up in cloud storage providers like Drive or even OneDrive, so on and so forth. And there's different types you can generate. So for example, when a URL is visited, when a host name is requested, you can do all of this really cool stuff. And also when a suspicious command is run, this is like free intrusion detection here, host-based intrusion detection. So Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end this, guys. I just wanted to make this clear. Take security into your own hands. And I know that at the end of this, you may be saying, well, their passwords weren't accessed, so I guess I can continue using LastPass. But it all comes down to what you find valuable. And personally, I wouldn't trust even the statement that they put out. That's just the way I am. Until I've seen things myself with regards to information that is pivotal to the reliable function of my life, in that I require this information for my life to proceed on normally, I'm not giving that to anyone else. I'm sorry. That's just myself. Now, if it's less important, then hey, I can start using maybe a cloud storage provider. If I know that I can, to a certain extent, afford to lose that data or to have it compromised. All confidential information should be, again, only accessible to you or any other relevant parties. With that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know it's been quite a long episode, but I'm really happy that I was able to go through this. Again, not really bashing or hammering LastPass. It is what it is. I'm sure they're going to learn a lot about this, but I'm curious to see whether anything else comes off this initial breach that they had in August of this year, and what information, proprietary information, they were able to get. With that being said, that's going to be it for me, and I'll be seeing you in the next CyberTalk episode.